Yay. Uh, good evening, everyone. We're going to have a recording of our session, so it'll be available later for everyone to check into if you couldn't make it tonight or if you have to leave early. We have some great presentations in store for you about the idea of marketing with a blog or in Frank's case, with a podcast. So this should be very helpful. We invite you to enjoy this session and ask questions a little bit later, unless at each one of them may say you can ask questions of them while they are talking, or well, not while they're talking, but during their presentation. How's that sound? A little better. And I would like to start with Steve LaLonde, who's been with us forever. And Steve, could you go ahead and talk to us about your blog?
You betcha. And I'll do a screen share real quick just so you can see what the blog part of it looks like, and I'll back off to the larger website. So I'm going to do that screen share briefly here. There we go. Share. And that should be visible to you now.
Yes, it says you've started screen sharing. There we go.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the blog page, and I did have it two categories until this evening. I decided to take an old category off. I had it because I was a teacher. I had an education blog going, but I've been retired long enough now that it was pretty dated stuff, so I took it out. So right now, this is just a writing blog. And I'm going to basically speak about this blog generally. I did want to show you what if you go to my website, it will take you to this page, which is just the front page, and talks about various things and the books and what have you that I've been working with. And so the website is Stephen LaLonde. That's Stephen with a PH .us, and you can see it right there. This website is actually about 4 areas of my involvements right now, because when I retired about 7 years ago, I decided I was going to work in 4 areas, and then one of them was going to be writing. The others were swimming, amateur radio, and woodworking. So this site documents all of those activities. So if you come into my website and want to see the woodworking stuff, you just click on the photo albums, or if you want to take a look at the blogs, it's just my blogs. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share here. So I need a little bit of this light to go ahead. So the current blog that I just showed you is on a website called webs.com. I have my own domain name established there. So when you go to stephenlalonde.us, you don't see the webs part, but it is hosted on webs.com. I first started writing the daily or the writer's blog on July 20th of last year. And didn't intentionally or didn't initially plan on doing it as a daily blog, but that evolved shortly into the process. So it was intermittent for the first 3 weeks, and then toward the end of that 3rd week, it turned into a daily blog. Today's blog number, the number of blogs, is 170, and I've been able to do the daily blogging without missing a day for the last 3 months. The timestamp that you'll see on the blogs is not always accurate. Wherever this thing is hosted, it must be on some dateline or something, because anything after 4 o'clock registers as the next day. So it's really kind of strange deal. And what I'm trying to do with this blog is to document my writing process. So it serves kind of as a writer's journal, but it goes into a lot more than just journaling. So in it, I'm talking about the trials and tribulations of being a writer and also about the successes that come in the process. And what I try to do is to write, probably between maybe 300 and 500 words each day. And then, excuse me, a lot of it is dealing with the book that I'm currently writing, which is INWG. And I want to give you just real quick about what that is about. The first book I wrote was called The Phoenix Gift. It's a contemporary novel taking place in Spokane in 1996. It has a real serious twist in it. But it's something that I had outlined 20 years ago, but I really didn't get around to getting serious about getting it written until after I retired. So that was the first novel that I wrote. I had published a book of poetry before that, and I'd been published in a number of nonfiction magazines and what have you prior to that. So what I was trying to do then with this whole thing is to talk about the process that I was going through and to share that as much as possible. A lot of this, though, I was going to talk about the sequence. So the first book that I wrote in this genre, which is historical fiction, is a book called Sign of Kira. And that was planned to be just a book. And it's turned into a series. And it did so because the characters started jumping out of the book and demanding their own book. So that's kind of what happened with it. So I wrote Sign, and then a character in there, a significant character, was Mentu, his Sinan's servant. And at the end of Sinan's book, Mentu starts to take a primary role. And so I went ahead and wrote Mentu. And in the process of writing Mentu, we meet another character, Mentu's mother. And so the book I'm writing on now is called INWG, and it is his mother. But this one's a prequel sequel, which means that it actually starts before the Sign of Kira book and continues after the Mentu, the Nubian book. And I'm finding I've had to stop now today. And for the next few days, I'm having to do a timeline because I'm having so much difficulty successfully joining all of this information that's in the previous two books and making it fit with what's happening in INWG. So I'm going to spend about 3 days here developing a timeline, which will make that hopefully a little easier to do. I have a stable of beta readers who give me quite a bit of very useful information and what have you. I'm also in a critique group. And in that critique group, there's 5 of us. There's myself and then 3 of my past students who are all published. And then one other person that's joined our group. Actually, I met her in this group, in the Inland Northwest Writers Group. And let's see here. So one of the things I did in late October and early November was to start talking about NaNoWriMo. And so National Novel Writing Month. And I documented my journey through NaNoWriMo this year on the blog. So there's a lot of blogging done with what's going on with NaNoWriMo, particularly in dealing with the word count and trying to log all that information. So that was kind of the major run for November. I did make my 50,000 words in November, and INWG is currently at about 75,000 words, and it's in probably 2/3 of the second draft. And there's going to be several more drafts as I iron this thing out. The word count, I've already spoken about that. In my blogs, I do talk about the characters, and I get kind of crazy talking like a possessed writer, in that I start discussing these characters as though they're the real people, because they become pretty real, as most of you probably have experienced. They become real. And that's what I say when I was writing Sign, that Mentu stood up, said, I need my own book. So he got it. And all of that. I talk about the victories that you get, which sometimes don't come as often as you want them to. But one victory I had was that I did enter sign-in into the Writer's Digest Self-Published Book Awards and got didn't place, but I got a really excellent review from the judge. And it was extremely positive, which I've used on my Facebook site and for promotion in marketing the book. And so when those kinds of things come along, that becomes a real quick fodder for the blog. Each day I start the day by cooking breakfast for my wife, and then I clean up after breakfast. And then the next thing I do every day is to sit down and do the blog. I use it as kind of a starter for the writing that I do that day on whatever I'm working on. So I write the blog, then I go downstairs to my primary writing area, and I work on the book. I found that working as writing goes best for me in the morning. Let's see here. I blog on critique group, the writers groups, including this one. There's several entries in there about the Inland Northwest Writers Guild, which some of you are new here. I want to tell you that this is a fantastic group. I did not have a book published by the time I joined this group. And it was one meeting where Russ from Grey Dog Press came to speak. That was actually the catalyst that made me leap into the whole process of actually getting published. So I credit this group specifically for that. As I mentioned, I have a number of beta readers who help me with these books as we go through. I also talk about events like book signings that I go to and talk about that process. I talk about marketing. I talk about resources and the research that I do, which on these books that I'm working on now, Sign-In, Mentu, and Anisi, I have over 300 hours of additional research. I actually taught in this subject area. I taught classical mythology, so it's not new to me by any means, but details about ships and daily routine on board a ship and how they handled lanterns, for instance, or lamps on the ships, and just tons of tiny details that make the reading more real. And so I've done a lot of that. And in trying to stay historically correct, I have visited the various sites, archaeological sites of the places I'm talking about. Some of them, there's not much archaeology being done. And so I have to do some creative work with that. I've tried to keep the timeline accurate, but I also use creative license. For instance, these books, Sign-In begins at 612 BCE. And at that point, coins were just starting to be used. And I have it in the book as a fully developed system of trade and payment. So I fudge a little bit on that. I have one character in all three books who is an actual historical figure, and that's Sappho, the poetess and philosopher, female philosopher from the island of Lesbos. And I've done a tremendous amount of research around her, and it fits into the book quite well. She was expelled from the island twice because she was a feminist, and the men didn't like that. And so they expelled her and her family. She came back, and the second time she left, I have written her into Anisi, where she actually gets her travels to Syracuse on Mentu's ship, which was kind of a fun thing to do. Once I do a blog for the day, I post a piece of that blog on my Facebook site. And I put a little piece of it, and at the end of it, I say, click on the link below to read the rest. And that directs them to my webpage. I do that because I love getting my webpage count up. And today, I checked it just before the meeting, I had 40 hits. So that was pretty good. And that, as I said, links it to my website. I have some followers who seem to be checking in every day. And I have some that are making comments to me, which I try to encourage and interact with as much as possible. This website that I'm on now does not facilitate sales. That is, I don't have a way to collect from credit cards, et cetera. So I'm in the process now. My youngest son, both my kids are in IT, and my youngest son has a company that develops websites, et cetera. And he's helped me move to a new host called GoDaddy, and that one will actually allow me to accept credit cards, and so I can actually make sales through the website, which I'm looking forward to. So basically, that's what I had for you, and I'd be love to answer any questions that might be there. And if not, then it's all yours, Linda.
You were pretty thorough there, dude. Now, I would like to stay with the topic of blogs and keep our momentum going here. And so, Patricia, if you're willing to go ahead with your presentation, I'd just love it. We'll get you unmuted there in a second, I think.
Sorry, we had pinned Steven so you could see him clearly, and I was trying to unpin him and I couldn't find this. So yeah, so I think I'll share my screen too. My name is Patrica Meredith, and I am the author of the Butcher Baker Candlestick Taker, which is the first in the Spokane Clock Tower mysteries. What? Okay. Which is right here. So it's a mystery, it's a historical mystery set in Spokane in 1901. And so because it's historical mystery, there's a lot I can write about to explain the history behind the story and all the research that I've done, just like Stephen was talking about. That's primarily what I love to post. So that way people who love the book and want to know more about what was true in the book can find it really easily. I do have historical notes in the back of my book, but then after all of that, I say, if you want to know more, head to my website. So, so here I've been posting things like, let's see, like when the book came out, and then actually for Christmas, I actually haven't been on this month. I took January off to kind of get a bunch of blogs written, so that way I could post them when I wanted them for the lead up through the rest of the year. So I actually did a bunch of YouTube videos also for Christmas. So sometimes I'm doing YouTube vlogging, I guess, and sometimes I'm doing writing blogs. So like here's one where I talked about Thanksgiving in 1901 Spokane and referred to one of my favorite resources that I found, which is Dear Mother. It's a collection of letters written home from Spokane in 1901. And so it's lots of in-person impressions of Spokane at the time. And so it's breathed a lot of life into my story and my characters and everything. So in my book, the primary characters are all made up, but everything else is historical. All the locations that they visit, all the events that happen around them, I take straight out of the Spokesman Review, out of articles, and then the people they interact with. So the coroner and everybody in the police force, other than my two detectives that I made up, everybody else is real. So that makes it really fun. So like Stephen was saying, I'm hoping to kind of blog a little bit about each of the characters. Now that the book is out, I can do that. I didn't feel like I could do that beforehand because anyone outside of my beta readers, they wouldn't know who I'm talking about. But now that the book is out, I feel like I can really kind of build that up, maybe explore some of their background and things like that, and how that might inspire future stories. So I guess the main thing I kind of wanted to talk about, one of the things was I use WordPress. I do have my own website address, but then I use WordPress in the background in order to publish. And I would say if you are new to blogging, I strongly recommend WordPress. It's been around probably the longest. So it is, I think it's the most user-friendly. It's very simple to use. If you don't know how to use it, hop on YouTube and you'll find videos all over the place explaining how to do it. But they've moved to a system where it's very simple. You use blocks and you can lay it out really nicely, and it ends up looking really nice when you go to the blog. So like, we'll go to the Thanksgiving one. So I use Canva, which is another program. in order to make my titles and things. And then, like Stephen was saying, I will post those on Instagram and on Facebook in order to draw people into reading my blogs. But then on the blog itself, that's where I can post, pictures from my research and quotes from my research and things like that, and just make it very user friendly to visit. And my goal is to get people to sign up for my newsletter, which right now I've got a short story that I wrote over Christmas, and then I have it set up so that way when you sign up for my newsletter, you get the short story for free. But the best thing about a newsletter is I can link my blog to it. So every time I post, people automatically get it in their email box. And I know for me, it's true that when I get something in my email box, I'm much more likely to remember to go look at it, right? Or it'll just be there. So I'll just go ahead and grab a couple lines and see it and read it. And so I try to write blogs that will grab people even from the newsletter, or things that they're like, ooh, this is interesting historical history. I'm going to pass this on to somebody, somebody who loves Spokane history and might be interested, or who is interested by, past police procedurals and things like that. I talk about my costumes, about my dress, how I dress, and just all the books that I read that inspire my writing. My background is in editing. And so I talk a lot about that, about how that has affected how I write and what I write. But mostly it's about the research. In some ways, it actually helps me because it gives me a location that I can go straight to and find what I need. So if I'm like, oh, right, I was, what was that thing that I wrote about for Butcher Baker? And I want to find, something about the history behind it. Like I did a whole series. Sorry, this is probably making you guys dizzy trying to find it. Those are my reviews. I went to the wrong thing. Let's see. Research over here. So things like Spokesman Review newspapers that inspired the events in the Spokane Clock Tower mysteries. So then you can quickly go there, and that'll lead you to other websites. So it'll lead you to, so you can actually see the newspapers that I used in order to inspire the events. So like this is a place, if you write historical fiction, Google Archives is amazing. It has all these old newspapers that you can read, and and they're public domain, yeah. So you can go right in there and I'll read something and go, ooh, that's a great inspiration for a story. So yeah, so let's see. So that's kind of what I write about. What was the other thing I talked about? It's a great way to draw people in when they want to know more. It's a great place to share more information, to lead people on the merry hunt, because research can be such a rabbit hole. You go down one and it just keeps going and going. So like I said, it's also a great place to kind of collect all of that and share it with people. So like my series centers around the building of the clock tower, the iconic clock tower of Spokane. And so the whole series is going to follow from when they started building it all the way through. So one of the things I shared on here was the articles that I used to follow the building of it. So it kind of gives away, how far I'll be going in the books. But it's been really fun doing all that research. So yeah, those are my blogs. It's simple and I mean, it helps that I'm historical mystery. So like I said, it's very easy for me to come up with ideas. Right now I'm only blogging, before the book got published, I was only blogging about once a month. And then right before release, about 2 months before release, I picked it up to once a week. And that's how often I've been posting. Perhaps someday I'll get up to one a day, but right now I'm just doing one a week. And that seems to be enough for now, with all the other things going on. I also homeschool and we live on a farm, so we're homesteading and all sorts of things. So I guess the other thing was the sequel to my book, Cupboards All Bared, is coming out in May of this year. And so one of the things I'm planning on doing for my blogs is to post the things that were being that were happening in the newspaper. So the things that were happening in town leading up to the events of the book. So the book itself is actually going to release on May 17th, which is the day that the book takes place in Spokane. So last year it would have been exactly 120 years later, which would have been really cool. But I didn't quite make it. So things like this article, May 15th, so it's talking about building the temporary depot, things like that. But the whole premise of the book is around the fact that President McKinley was supposed to come to Spokane end of May. And there were some articles leading up to May 17th that when they realized his wife was sick down in California, and so he didn't make it up. But of course, I have other events that are going to all tie into that. And so I want to share all of those as lead up to the book to really get people excited about, oh, this day in history, this is what happened. And then they'll be ready to dive right into the sequel book with a lot more of the background research that I have in my head that not all of the readers will have. So yeah, I guess that's it. Are there any questions?
Do you show people's responses in your blog or just treat them as private?
Sometimes, like, I don't get a lot of comments. So I honestly don't even know how many people actually read my blog. I know somewhere you can find like a counter, but like you'll see this one doesn't even have any comments. Usually it's my mom leaving me comments saying, oh, it's so lovely, it's so wonderful. More people should read your book. Thanks, Mom. But hopefully that'll increase. The book's doing really well in Spokane since it came out. So, and then I've actually had people also contact me through the comments for book club meetings. I've actually got one this week, podcasts, things like that. People will contact me through the comments, but then I usually don't share those. I'll go ahead and edit those on my side because I can read them ahead of time. And so that way, if it's a bot or something fake, or I've had book club people leave their phone numbers. And so it's like, oh, no, you don't want to put that out there. So I might trim it down so that way it's just the message, hey, we'd love to have you come for a book club. So that way other people can see that, absolutely, please ask me about that, because I would love to do that. So yeah.
I was gonna ask, I'm sorry if I missed it, but did you say it was Google Docs you used for like the historical articles?
So it was, I think it's Google Archives.
Google
is the link.
Archives, okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's newspapers.com, but you have to pay a subscription fee for that.
Gotcha.
You can do 7 days free through newspapers.com. So usually what I'll do is I'll make a huge list of these are the things I'm going to look for, and then I'll get it all, get it all in there in 7 days, because newspapers.com is searchable in a way that Google Archives is not. Google Archives is really, you are going to flip every single page. So if you're looking to flip through newspapers, looking for, just fun inspiration, then it's a great way to research. But if it's just going to distract you, I would recommend doing newspapers.com. And it's probably
it's like you're really reading the newspaper then.
Exactly. It's super fun.
I've been told
Google Archives too. Yeah.
I've been told that the Women's Club has a lot of resources for historical happenings and little stories about what's happened in the past.
Club. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that one.
The Spokane Women's Club.
I'll have to find them.
Yes.
I am a member of the Facebook, the Spokane Historical Researchers, and that has connected me with a lot of great people and resources. So, and beta readers, definitely. So. All right. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you. That was wonderful. I've got to sign up for Steve's blog. I get one from Patricia when it comes out. Pops into my email. It's a newsletter, I think, and is it the newsletter? Now, explain to me the difference between newsletter and blog.
So a newsletter comes directly into your inbox, and some authors, and I'd love to get to this point where I have something that I'm sharing through my newsletter that won't be on my blog. So a newsletter would be more personal, more, hey, this is what's happening on the farm right now, and here are some personal things about me and being an introvert or being, you know, whatever, more personal things. But right now I just have my newsletter connected to like the RSS feed for my blog. So that way those go directly to people. And then occasionally, like I send out in my newsletter, they hear first when I release like covers, when I do a cover reveal, or when I published my short story, they all got it for free automatically. Or when the new book comes out, they'll be notified first before everybody else. So
you can also curate your newsletters so that you aren't necessarily sending out one newsletter. You send a different newsletter out to different groups of people. So if you have people who sign up for your newsletter through your free giveaways, they're just there for the free.
sometimes.
So if you have a free short story, they're a great blast person, people to add to. They want to be blasted. Then there's others who are signing up through like a historical group who want the history. They want the heavy history. And so you can curate, especially if you're doing a lot of newsletter work, you can curate who's getting what, who's getting the pre-release, because you know that there's somebody who's going to be a pre-releaser versus someone who's there for the research. So you can kind of control how and where you're getting. And it also allows you to, in small chunks, message out to people who maybe want to be taken off of your newsletter.
Yeah.
And that's often suggested once a year you go through and send a message out. Hey, are you still reading? They don't respond. They probably aren't. And if you're getting up to the point where you have thousands and thousands of subscribers, it starts costing you money. So you do want to cull that down to people who are actually going to be reading your newsletter.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this. Has been fascinating. Learning lots of new things. I went to a Zoom meeting yesterday that was it's for booksellers, and it had some people from the big traditional publishers, and they were talking about marketing and the process the whole timeline of a book, how long it takes from when they get it and 2 years later it's finally released, and at what point they do what portions of the marketing. And so it was fascinating to hear. They were talking a lot about the social media and how it's used, and but also the idea of, and the point, real important point was, they said, it was funny because the publicist, she's an independent publicist that gets hired a lot for thousands of dollars, I found out. She says, oh, it can cost $8,000 to $10,000 for a book. And I was like, whoa, and that's the publicist part. So anyway, but they were all in agreement that it doesn't matter how many numbers you have. They said, I don't care about numbers. It's community building. How many people are really connected with you, and you're building a community. So I thought I'd slip that in here tonight, because I found that, I thought that numbers was the game. You know, it was all, well, how many people do you have on your, but they've learned that just because of social media and the way it is, and people just sign up for everything, they've learned that you could have 5,000 people and nobody reads a thing you're doing. So they look at community now. They said a few hundred people in your community is worth way more than in thousands. You know, they recognize the difference between an author who is promoting their book and their writing and building community, and the idea of an influencer, who is somebody who just mentions your book and it hits thousands of people. And they said that's two different critters, and most authors are not influencers. There's a difference. Anyway, I don't want to eat up any more of the time we have, because we're all looking forward to hearing from Frank about his podcast, which is wonderful. And so I would like to turn it over to Frank.
Well, thank you, Linda. Can everybody hear me okay? Is the audio good? Okay. I did want to start by saying those are a couple of really good blogs, and that both Stephen and Patricia made some really good points. In fact, I think I'll start by sharing my blog real quick, very quick, just a moment or two. Tell me when that's up. Somebody give me the thumbs up, Linda, when you're seeing the screen. Okay. So just so you know that you can do things simple and easy, this is blogspot.com. they give you a bunch of different options. If I was doing it over again, I'd probably follow Patricia's advice, but I started this blog a long time ago, back in 2007. And so I guess I'd want to transfer everything over, and that sounds like a lot of work, but it is kind of nice. I'm not nearly as active as either of them, but when I've got a new anthology coming out, or something happens, like here where I decided to do some narration for my own audiobooks, so I blogged about that, and it's kind of a neat thing to have, and it isn't a lot of work if you're only doing it once every couple of months. So I just kind of wanted to give a push towards what they were already saying, and a little affirmation there. And also, don't forget your author page at Amazon. You can link that so that your blog posts push right in. Now, this is the blog post I did just today, and I didn't have to do anything because I've already got it set up to go straight to here. And so that's kind of a neat sort of function that you can get out of Amazon. All right. It's not doing what I wanted to do, but that's okay. Okay, here we go. I have a podcast. It's called Wrong Place, Right Crime. It is focused on crime fiction, mostly crime fiction authors. Occasionally, I'll have editors, reviewers, or super readers come on as well, but the majority of them are crime fiction authors. And crime fiction pretty wide. I mean, really probably mystery, anything that could slide under the mystery umbrella, including thrillers, or even sci-fi with mystery in it. I mean, I'm not super picky about it in terms of, that's not close enough to crime fiction, but it does tend to mostly be crime fiction. This is the main website here. And this is the interrogation chair where you shall sit if you are ever a guest. This is the bright light that I'll shine to make sure you're telling me the truth as I interrogate you. No, it's nothing like that. It's very friendly. You just scroll down, and this is WordPress, which Patricia mentioned, and it was pretty easy to get this set up. This is the most recent episode, just came out today. And you can go back in the archives all the way back to the first episode back in May of 2017. If you click on one of the episodes, it brings it up and has the title there, and you can actually play it right here. Now, is my audio going to come through if I push play? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Let's try. Let's see what happens. Can you guys hear music right now?
No.
Okay. Then the answer to the question is no, it does not. So the reason I was going to push play is just to show you there's a intro theme music, there's outro theme music, both of which are royalty-free pieces. But definitely, any show you've ever watched has theme music, and so I was going to play that. You can play it by clicking on any episode and hear it for yourself. A little bit of history on this podcast. I originally came up with the idea of doing a podcast because one of my co-authors, Eric Beatner, and another writer friend of his, Steve Loudon, they had started a podcast called Writer Types, which is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't checked it out, there's 5 years worth of episodes out there, and it's well worth your time. And they have interviewed everybody from the Lawrence Blocks and the Lee Childs down to fresh-faced, this is my first book that I self-published authors, and everything in between in terms of the writer's journey. And so, and I would equate their show a little bit to a Monday or a weekday morning radio drive show, this is Spokane. So like Dave, Ken, and Molly, sort of, it's kind of one of those sort of things. A lot of humor, short takes, excellent editing, because Eric is a television editor by trade, or by bread on the table trade anyway. And I thought it was a real cool idea, and I started kicking it around, and I thought, this would be fun because I would get to talk to other writers, and in essence, by promoting other writers, you're giving back to the writing community. And then, of course, there is the mercenary element of it too. Your name is getting out there at the same time, and that is an element of it as well. But I knew I couldn't out Eric and Steve. They're just funny, and I'm not nearly as funny as they are, if I'm funny at all. So I kind of went the other direction initially. I decided that instead of the early morning drive kind of show, that Dave, Ken, and Molly sort of interview stuff, I was going to do the late night FM radio. You're driving your car late at night, it's raining, you click over and you hear two people talking about something, and maybe it's a topic you're interested in, and maybe it's the topic that the guest is well known for, or maybe they'd gone off on a tangent and they're talking about Aikido or 45 records or whatever, but then they edge back to whatever the guest's wheelhouse is, and more of a long-ranging, freewheeling sort of conversation is what I started shooting for. And so that's what I did initially for the first year or so, once a month. And then I discovered I wasn't really talking to enough people. I was getting too many guest requests, and I was having to say no. So I changed it up after about the first season, into the second season, and started doing a feature episode every month. But then on the off weeks, I did what I call an open and shut episode, a much shorter, initially supposed to be 8 to 12 minutes. Now it's more 15 to 20 minute episode that just gets you in there. Hey, here's the writer, here's the writer's work, here's what they're doing next. Now you know who this writer is, talk to you later, sort of thing, in comparison to the longer episodes. So an open and shut episode. So I started doing those in the second season, and I'm still doing those. I'm up to does it say what episode number it is on here? I think it's episode 143 is this episode that just dropped here. And so that's kind of the history behind the whole thing. And like Eric and Steve, I made a point to interview people all across the genre, and some maybe slightly outside that just barely have a tenuous grasp on being mystery. And everywhere in their journey, from brand new writers to some pretty well established big names, which has been kind of cool, I have to admit. When you grew up reading a particular writer, or you admire a particular writer, and then you get to sit and ask them questions and biz-baz with them for 40 minutes or whatever, it's kind of cool. And so far, none of them have been jerks either. So the don't meet your heroes warning hasn't applied yet. So knock on wood, because I'm sure the next guest will be horrific. But anyway, so a quick little bit of logistics, just in case you're thinking about this. All you need to do it equipment wise is a microphone, some software to edit, and a place to host. Essentially, those are the key pieces that you need. The mic is a Blue Yeti, cost about $120, and the sound is phenomenal. I mean, you could get a more expensive one, you could have even better sound, but only at that point, only an audiophile is going to notice the difference between you and your upgrade. Since I'm not doing this for profit, and I'll get to sponsorship in a second here, but it doesn't make sense to me to go for the extreme high end stuff. This is what Eric recommended when I talked to him about starting the show, and he was bang on. Blue Yeti is the name of it, but well worth $120. Software wise, I use a free piece of editing software you may be familiar with called Audacity. It's great. They constantly update it. The current iteration is way easier to use than it was even 6 months ago. The other software I use is Call Note, which I use to record the calls. So I connect via Google Meet, and then I record the calls with Call Note here, and that costs about, I think, 10 or 15 bucks a year is all. It doesn't want to go away. It's going to get closed. So Hosting wise, I would have listened to Patricia too if she would have been telling me to use WordPress back in 2017, but I didn't. And so what I did actually initially was hosted it on SoundCloud, and it cost me about 145 bucks Canadian a year to be hosted there with unlimited space. And that's where the sponsor comes in. My previous publisher, Down Out Books, they sponsor the podcast, and I basically charge them. I charge them 25 bucks a month, so they get 4 episodes for 25 bucks. It's a screaming deal for them. Covers my hosting costs and some incidentals. Maybe buys a cup of coffee, and everybody's happy. And so I pimp them a little bit every episode, and every feature episode, Lance from the publisher comes on and does a quick little bit, a minute or two of what's coming out from the publisher. Now I don't, hosting wise, going to SoundCloud like I did. I actually send it from SoundCloud here to this website that I host, ironically on WordPress is where my website is hosted. And I would not recommend that. I would recommend either hosting it on your own website, or using Blog Talk Radio or one of the other podcast hosting services that are out there. It's just far simpler. The problem is that changing it over from what I've got now, much like the blog I showed you a little while ago, is just more effort than it's worth. So learn from my mistake. So the benefits of having the podcast. Oh, I should tell you the cost time-wise too. There's admin time, obviously, just like anything else we all do in our writing work. You're not writing 100% of the time. Emailing back and forth with guests and publicists, setting up the times, putting it on the calendar, sending them the calendar invite, doing the research on the author if you don't know them ahead of time. If you can and you want to, read the book that they send you, if they send you one, and all of that takes time. That's time you're not writing. Obviously, then there is the time you're doing the interview itself, which is actually the funnest and time. That's usually about, like I said, a 20-minute episode for the open and shut, with a little bit of time beforehand. And sometimes those conversations afterwards go on for quite a while. And sometimes we get off the line pretty quick. It just depends on the individuals, myself and the person. If we hit it off and feel like we have something to talk about, and then we do. The feature episodes, they go about an hour with the same caveat. But the time post-production is a pretty large investment. On the feature episode running about an hour, it takes me at least about, I would say, 3 to 4 hours of post-production to get that together. The open and shut episodes are a little simpler and shorter, so they take maybe about an hour to do. But again, you're talking about time you're spending, on something besides writing, and so that is the other cost, in addition to the financial cost, the time cost to consider. But there are benefits. I mentioned one of them already. You meet the authors. You get to meet some famous people. Sometimes you get to meet some really cool people that you didn't already know. You get to interview your friends and pump them up and get them out there. It's been a really great experience. I retired in 2013, and we moved down here to Central Oregon in 2016. And since 2016, or since 2017, when I quit I quit teaching. I was doing some teaching for about 4 years post-retirement. I pretty much was a hermit here at the house. I mean, it just is the way it worked out. I wrote a lot. I was home. My wife was at work. This podcast became a social outlet as well. It became the opportunity to make social connections. And then when the COVID lockdown occurred, and even after the lockdown has ended, but we're still in the midst of this pandemic, it's continued to do that. So there's definitely a lot of benefit to it in that sense of it. You're also networking. I mean, I've had authors on the show that I hit it off with, that I feel like if I wanted to ask for a blurb or something like that, I'd be comfortable doing it. And I think they'd be comfortable saying yes, it wouldn't be an issue. I haven't really taken advantage of that. I'm hesitant to, but I feel like it's in the bank if I ever wanted to. When I go to the different conferences now, and I attend Left Coast Crime and BoucherCon are the only two I go to. You know, I get to meet the people that have been on the show. There's an icebreaker there right away. Oh, hey, you were on the show, yeah. And boom, you're talking right away. You're already friends rather than you know, shaking hands and having to get to know each other. And so I don't have to explain networking any further. Everybody knows what the benefits of that are, and definitely having a podcast over a period of time, like I said, over 140 episodes now, you start to build that network. It also gets you a little name recognition. I've been surprised. I'm by no means a celebrity, but I have been surprised at people contacting me and then kind of reverse engineering how they came to find me and reach out to me. And sometimes the person that told them about me and I've never heard of them. They are, so it's a lot more than 1 degree of separation. And so that's something to think about. And then of course, name recognition and all the other ways that it means something. It's not a bad thing to have when what you're trying to do is sell books eventually. You get free books. I mean, if you like to read, a lot of writers and or publicists will send you digital or hard copies of books. I mean, Linda knows all about this. But for those of us who don't work at a bookstore, it's kind of cool to have people send you a book. And it's gotten to the point where they just show up in the mail now. Sometimes, not every day or anything, but you know, not infrequently either. And so that's kind of a neat perk. And then, as I alluded to earlier, it really is kind of cool to be able to promote another writer, to give back to the community in that way, to take some time and really make a writer look as good as you can and get their name out there as well as you can. That's one of the reasons why I don't do live shows. That's why I do record and then edit, because first off, I cut out a lot of my own blather to make sure that it's focused on the guest. And then, you know, I'll cut out the lip smacking and the ums and ahs and the stammers and this kind of stuff. And so all the guests sound more well-spoken than they actually are. Some of them are already very well-spoken, but they get to sound even better. And I do some audio mastering too, so the sound quality is as good as it can be. It's still an amateur deal. I'm not a professional. Don't have a career in radio or in sound engineering or anything like that. But it's a cut above, you know, the ones out there where people are just recording something on their phone and throwing it up there with no preparation. It's got a little bit of, well, actually a lot of effort to it, I should say. So let me run through showing these things I've been talking about to you real quick, just so you have some kind of a visual. Here is SoundCloud, and these are all the files. They let you upload a file. You drop your file in there, simple as pie, and then a bunch of here. I don't want to pretend to do it because it might actually upload it. But then it gives you the opportunity to enter the information. But it also pulls the information from the metadata on your audio file. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second. Oops, I don't want to do a new share. I do want to move this if I can, but it doesn't look like it'll let me. Oh, well, awesome. Let's move it down here out of the way. All right, so this is just what it looks like on Spotify. That's the other thing I didn't tell you. I apologize. When Patricia mentioned an RSS feed, if you don't know what that is, I can't tell you what the initials stand for, but it's basically like the digital internet equivalent of your radio signal. And what it, you know, your RSS feed, if you connect it to, say, Spotify, it picks up your feed. This is the end result. Your show shows up on Spotify. The nice part about SoundCloud was that a large number of downstream services pick up the feeds that come out of SoundCloud. And if they're a podcast, they start they just appear. I found the podcast in places I've never asked it to be. Since it's a free podcast, the more the merrier. I don't care. Spotify, Pandora, a couple other ones. I had to go in and actually say, hey, will you carry my podcast? Here's the RSS feed. And then they said, yeah, sure. And boom, here's how it shows up on Spotify. Deezer is a big one in Europe. Same kind of thing. You guys have all seen these kinds of things before, so I don't need to dwell on them. When they do come out, I always throw it up on social media here. So put it on my website or my Facebook site, and share it in all the relevant groups on Facebook. Same thing on Twitter, and so forth. So I feel like I missed something, but if I did, I suppose somebody will have a question. So I hope that's what you're looking for, Linda. And that's basically it.
Thank you.
Oh, I need to stop sharing the screen. There we go.
Hooray. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you. I know that we had someone who Kathy was thinking of sharing, but I think I wouldn't be doing her justice, giving her enough time. So I'm going to figure out a way to put some people together for just patchwork a whole bunch of different topics together one of these times. And I'm going to put you in that, Kathy, because I really, if you can, go to her website and pick up on that, because it's beautiful. She does beautiful, beautiful work on screen. So do you want to just tell them where that's located, Kathy?
Yes, I just put it in the chat. So it's my name, kathyretta.com. Thanks.
Once you get there, you can just kind of click on the blog part and you'll see it, and it's pretty neat looking. I was just there a couple days ago. So, and do we have questions for these folks at all, or were they so darn thorough that they just covered it, everything?
Can I ask Pat a question?
Mhm.
Go on, Denise. Is that your name, Denise?
Yeah, that's okay.
You can go
we-
first. Go on.
Patricia.
I was going to ask Frank real quick. So I noticed that one of the podcasts was about 20 minutes long. Is that about the average that you, how many minutes do you usually record? You said 45 and then you edit it down to probably about 20. Is that?
Yeah, I have basically two different kinds of episodes. The open and shut episodes are the weekly episodes, basically. I usually try to record in the 20 to 25 minute range, and then I try to trim it as much as makes sense and keep it around 15 to 20 minutes. And then once a month, there's a feature episode, and that can go up anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour, depending on the content that comes from the person being interviewed. So I try to not necessarily pick somebody who's a big name or anything like that, but I try to pick somebody who's got a lot that we can talk about and a lot of different dimensions to explore.
Thank you.
I'll second too that the Blue Yeti mic is fantastic.
Yes.
I'm using it for audiobook recording now with Audacity, and it's just been a lifesaver.
All right. Let's see.
As soon as you brought up your website, I lost most of your sound, but I could follow much of it. You probably don't remember me, but I talked to Gil Moberly, and he says, next time I see you at your meeting, say hi.
Well, tell them hi back. Did my audio cut out for everybody else as well?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm out in the boondocks like you are, so get very bad reception. I do like your books, by the way.
Well, thank you. That, after all, is the entire purpose of the website or of the
What?
podcast, right?
What, you write too? Good grief, Frank, I had no idea. Sorry about that. That was my attempt at a joke. And Joyce, did you have a question?
Yeah, Patricia, where did you say you get the beta readers from?
Oh, I just started collecting people who were interested. It started with friends and family. And
Facebook
then
cattle call.
and then Facebook. Yeah, I got out. Specifically, I went to the Spokane researchers group because I knew that they would all have a background in Spokane history, and I wanted some readers that would have some of that, so that they could double check my stuff and make sure that I was being accurate and a positive representation of everything. So, if you're interested, you're free to email me. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, I'm always
And
looking for
it's
more.
always better to have more data readers and then cull down as needed, because people will lose interest or other reasons you may not want them as a beta reader, but you won't know until you have them. And it's also
Right.
great inoculation for once you're published, because then you can handle the bad reviews a little bit better.
I have several local authors, and Joyce is well aware of this. I have several local authors that are waiting for me to read their books and do something about it. And I apologize to everyone because, wow, my time is just so slender, and I've got so many commitments. But it's not because I'm not interested in the work, because everybody's really doing good work. So, and
Patricia, I was just going to say, Patricia mentioned newsletters, and I did not have a newsletter for the longest time until 2019. And I so wish I would have started a newsletter back in 2005 or whatever, because it's a pretty powerful tool. And every so often I'll throw in a newsletter that goes out and an email that goes out, a call for beta readers and for advanced readers, and you'll nail a couple every time of people who are interested. And I don't know if you do this or not, Patricia, but I break it into two categories. Beta readers being people you send the draft to, who will read it and get back to you, and they tend to have an area that they focus on. This person's all about typos and grammar. This person's about continuity. This is a character and story person, and it's good to have that well-rounded group. And then there's another group, the advanced readers, that when the book is done but not yet released, I'll ship it to them ahead of time so that they can read it and get a review posted day 1 or 2 of the book release. But there's only a few people in the group that are in the middle of that Venn diagram. Most of them are in one group or the other because that's where their interests lie. So something to think about.
Thanks, Frank.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I have a problem with the idea of people who don't read in my genre being able to critique that end of things, because if they don't understand what's needed, for instance, for a mystery or for a crime novel, they don't know if you're missing something. And so there's to me, there's different kinds of readers. Now, you may have somebody who's reading for just, does it seem exciting to you? Is it written? Do you have to stumble over the text, or is it smoothly written and all that? And if that's what you're looking for, that's one thing. But to have somebody who reads romance novels critique whether or not you've done a good job on your mystery, they're two different critters. And how are you going to know that their advice is any good at all? So I would share that.
Yeah.
Well, what advice to take and what advice not to take is a whole other conversation.
Right.
Well worth our time to speak about sometime. But
Yeah,
I would say that person is going to be able to tell you if your characters are flat, if your dialogue is stilted, these sorts of baseline things that still make it worth it.
Right. There's so many, well, anyway, as you said, that's a good topic for later. I think did everybody get the newsletter? Okay, that has the future few meetings listed in it, and one of those is for critiques, all things critiquing. And I think I'll probably be able to include the concept of beta readers in there because
Okay, good.
it's a form of critiquing. And so anyway, any more questions for everyone, or are we winding down, or what do you think?
I was wondering if Frank still gives classes. He gives the best writing classes I've ever been to.
Well, I appreciate that, Paul. That was some of the most fun I ever had being around other writers, I'll be honest with you. I haven't done any of those sessions since I moved down here to Central Oregon. I thought about it, but it's one of those things where, you know, you have to have a little bit of credibility. Like people have to know, who the hell are you if you're not a big name? And in Spokane, I had that synergy going, and I had aunties, I had Linda, you know, and so people at least would take a second look and then decide if there was any credibility there. And I haven't found that same, and I haven't really tried, to be honest with you. I really haven't found that same community here. I'm down outside of Bend in a town called Redmond in Central Oregon. So I thought about doing it in an online capacity, but I think people are a little bit online out. So I'm not sure how that would work.
I think online is going to be with us forever now.
Yeah, I think even national publishers are saying it's going so well because they can reach people all across the world with having them come to things that they're doing. So I think there'll probably be a hybrid. There'll be some that are done in person, especially I expect, and they were mentioning yesterday at the one I went to, that where your author is associated with a local bookstore, they're likely to go in there and have signings. They're going to get tons of people show up for that if they're known, if they've been publishing. And if they're new, they'll have people in the community that want to support them. So it's a lot different thing than having an author go around the country. Of course, huge authors can draw, and until we get rid of this plague that won't let us sit more than 5 feet apart, we, at that point, it's hard to have any kind of feeling of community and closeness when you're like that. So, well, I think the recap is, the idea, I keep hearing this everywhere tonight, and then everywhere I'm attending all these things constantly, and I'm hearing community building. And I think part of that has to do with what's happened because of COVID. That whole idea has it was always there, but it's just gotten bigger. So I would suggest any
guys are trying to convince me that
somebody's radio is picking up something here, but anyway.
No, Stephen.
There's something coming in on my phone.
Oh, well, Steve. Anyway, I would suggest to any writer these days, if you've got a limitation on your time, is, focus on how can you build a personal community of people, of readers. And I think you'll find that in a lot of ways is a lot, it's a bite that you can take and chew on, because it doesn't require that you take over the world. So some of these things that the folks were talking about, if you don't have a blog where, for instance, if you have books that have to do with, you have a protagonist who solves crimes around the fishing industry, for instance, or around that kind of thing, then having a blog about that topic, you can find people by putting that blog out on social media, YouTube and various places, attract people that want to see something about that topic, and then they run into your book being promoted there. So you can actually discover people that don't even know you exist and draw them in that way. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
One observation, everybody's talking about blogs and websites and social media. Zoom is social media too. And think about what it might add to your blogs and all the other things you're doing online to schedule a monthly meeting with your fans on Zoom.
And we haven't even touched on YouTube, which is a whole other animal
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
That's why I put these up on YouTube, and I know a lot of authors from other parts of the country that do, they'll like be a part of a group. There's one, female crime writers, and let's see, rogue writers or something, and they do that. They have various things that they put in a Zoom get together, and they're also on social media, and that's a group. So sometimes you can find a group of people that are similar to what you're doing by topic. That can help because it narrows down what you're trying to promote in any given venue. But people that can help support that. So you're not the only one having to do it, not the only one having to do the work and show up every time. But
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. But I'm thinking your own books, your own area, you have control over it. And think about what your fans how they would appreciate an opportunity to just have a 20-minute talk with you, along with, 1,400 other of their friends. But it's just something that might be useful.
yeah, and Patricia has very nicely agreed to attend the Auntie's Morning Book Group in I think is it April, I think, isn't it?
April, yeah, it's right before the second book comes out. So
yeah, and to in other words, to come and be a part of the group that day. So we're discussing her book and reading it in advance, and so she will be there. We've done that with Jess Walter, and we did that with, oh gosh,
Who's that?
yeah, who's that? And a lot of authors, they love to do that. They love to meet people that are their readers.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, before we go, Linda, the one thing I meant to say but didn't, I already closed out all the windows, but if you go back to my website or go to anywhere where the podcast is at, not today's episode, but last week's episode with Vicki J. Carter. She's an author, but she hasn't had her first book published yet. And most of what she talked about on the episode is her role as the author's librarian. And she's a librarian by profession, and she's set up this website and to teach authors how to research or point them in the right direction. And some of the things that Patricia said, some of the ways that she goes about it are exactly what Vicki was talking about. So if that's something that, there's a resource there for you, I guess. Vicki J. Carter, she has a website called The Author's Librarian. You can hear her on the podcast if you want to know more about her, but it's not just for historical reference and research. It's for whatever it is you need to research. Research is research. So it's a pretty good resource and worth making note of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Vicki Carter. Well, I'm gonna probably let you go if we've run out of additional things to say. I know people want to be polite. They don't want to leave before we're done, but people have to get on with their lives. And I really appreciate, let's give a little round of applause to our presenters. I appreciate your time and effort, because I know, Frank, that while you were doing this, you weren't writing. And as you made a point of earlier. But this is recorded. It will be uploaded. I will let you know next time when it's available. And thank you very much. Next time is poetry. And it's amazing. We do have some people even here tonight that are into poetry. So that's going to be our focus next time. And I look forward to seeing everybody. Oh dear, Eric Schubach just showed up. Well, he's here in time to hear us leave. Sorry, Eric, but you're just on the tail end of us being here. So anyway, I'm trying to give
Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda.
I wanted to invite you to go to the website and click on the poetry page, because I did a poem here a couple days ago that I'm pretty pleased with. So.
Oh, cool. Well,
Thank you, Linda. Great session.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. Hi, Beth.
thank you.
Jared, glad you can make it. All you.
Bye-bye.
Happy to see you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Nice to meet
That's
you, everybody.
okay.
I was late.